Hello supporters, and thank you for tuning in to a Christmas Carol Masterclass Session 1, where we're going to look at an introduction to Scrooge. We're going to start off with the preface, and a preface is an introduction to a book, typically stating its subject, scope, or aims. On the right hand side of the slide, you'll see I've actually attached the preface, and this is the 1843 one where it says, "I've endeavoured in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea which shall not put my readers out of humour with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me, may haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it. Their faithful friend and servant, C.D." So the preface of A Christmas Carol serves as a direct address from Dickens to his readers, establishing both the tone and purpose of the novella. In 1843, that preface, Dickens describes the text as a ghostly little book and expresses his hope that it will haunt readers' houses pleasantly. The phrase haunt is significant. It implies that the story's themes and messages will linger in the reader's mind, much like the ghosts do for Scrooge. However, A Christmas Carol is not just a ghost story. Dickens makes it clear that it carries a strong moral and social message. He intended the novella to act as a sledgehammer blow against social injustice, particularly the mistreatment of the poor. By 1852, when A Christmas Carol was published in a collected edition, Dickens wrote a new preface. In this later version, he distances himself from claims of deep character study, stating he never attempted great elaboration of character. His purpose was, in a whimsical kind of mask, to awaken some loving and forbearing thoughts. The term whimsical kind of mask is crucial. A mask was a 16th and 17th century form of theatre, typically allegorical and symbolic. By referring to his novella in this way, Dickens suggests that A Christmas Carol is more than a mere work of fiction. It's a performance of social and moral change, designed to engage and transform its audience. In terms of purpose and style, he balances moral instruction with engaging storytelling, ensuring his readers are guided towards self-reflection rather than being lectured. The preface also reflects Dickens' narrative technique. Throughout the novella, his conversational and intrusive narrative voice engages readers directly. By addressing them with humour, irony, and asides, Dickens creates a personal connection with his audience. So let's just have a quick look at Stave One and summarise it. Within this stave of A Christmas Carol, Dickens introduces Ebenezer Scrooge, a miserly, cold-hearted businessman who rejects the warmth and generosity of Christmas. As he leaves his counting house on Christmas Eve, he rudely dismisses his cheerful nephew, Fred, and refuses to donate to charity, insisting that the poor should go to workhouses or prisons. He begrudgingly allows Bob Cratchit a single day off, but ensures his office remains frigid, reflecting his own emotional coldness. That night at home, supernatural events begin. Scrooge sees Marley's face in the door knocker and hears mysterious chains rattling. Soon, Marley's ghost appears wrapped in chains forged from his past greed and selfishness. He warns Scrooge that he will suffer the same eternal torment unless he changes his ways. Marley tells Scrooge he will be visited by 3 spirits who will offer him a chance at redemption. And the chapter ends with a chilling atmosphere as Scrooge, deeply unsettled, drifts into a restless sleep. So 3 things to remember when it comes to Stave One. His characterization. Dickens presents Scrooge as a symbol of greed and isolation, describing him as hard and sharp as flint and solitary as an oyster. His rejection of charity and Christmas reflects his miserly values, which are central to the novel's moral theme. The theme of the supernatural. The appearance of Marley's ghost introduces the novella's ghost story elements, setting up the 3 upcoming spirits who will guide Scrooge's transformation. The ghost's chains symbolize the consequences of a life spent in selfishness and greed. And the third thing is foreshadowing of Scrooge's redemptions. Marley warns Scrooge that he has a final chance to change, hinting that his fate is not sealed. The introduction of the three spirits prepares the reader for Scrooge's journey through his past, present, and future. So now we're going to have a look at 7 key quotes from Stave One. The first one is Marley was dead to begin with. We're going to look at a bit of context, some analysis, and wider significance. Well, in regards to context, the novel opens with an unequivocal statement about Marley's death. Dickens immediately establishes the certainty of Marley's fate, which is necessary for the supernatural elements that follow. The narrator's assertion that Marley was as dead as a doornail is later humorously questioned, reinforcing the conversational tone of the novella. When analysing the quote, the blunt declaration, the short factual sentence creates an immediate sense of finality and importance. The repetition of dead, the word is reinforced, ensuring no ambiguity about Marley's fate. Then we have foreshadowing. Marley's death, is not just a plot device. It serves as a mirror to Scrooge's potential fate if he does not change. And then it has a metaphysical significance. Death here is both literal in terms of Marley's physical demise and figurative in terms of Scrooge's moral and emotional stagnation. Now we'll look at wider significance. The certainty of Marley's death contrasts with his later ghostly return, reinforcing the supernatural elements of the novella. By beginning with death, Dickens shocks the reader into recognizing the dark themes underpinning the story. Memento Mori, which is a reminder of death, the novel warns the consequences of a life poorly lived. The second quote we're going to look at is Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. So contextually, this phrase was commonly used in literature before Dickens, where he questions its logic in a brief narrator's aside. When we're analysing it, there's an idiom here. Dickens employs an established phrase to reinforce Marley's death. It has elements of narrative intrusion. The narrator humorously questions why a doornail is particularly dead, breaking the fourth wall and engaging the reader. And then contrast, the light-hearted tone momentarily distracts from the bleak subject matter, balancing humour and morbidity. In terms of wider significance, the phrase becomes symbolic of finality. Marley is not just dead, but undeniably, irreversibly dead. The aside enhances Dickens's distinctive narrative voice, making the reader an active participant in the storytelling. Quote number 3, squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. So contextually speaking, this description of Scrooge occurs before he speaks a single line, defining his character through an onslaught of negative attributes. When it comes to analysing this quote, we have an asyndetic list. So it hasn't got any conjunctions, it's just the list is separated by commas. The words pile up relentlessly, overwhelming the reader and reflecting Scrooge's greed. We've got harsh verbs. Each word suggests violent and selfish actions, reinforces Scrooge's parasitic nature. It's a biblical allusion, the sinner. It associates Scrooge with moral corruption and spiritual decay. And then we have dynamic imagery. The word suggests physical movement, as if Scrooge is actively hoarding wealth. When looking at the wider significance, the intensity of this description makes Scrooge's eventual redemption all the more striking. Dickens links avarice with spiritual emptiness, reinforcing Christian moral values. Then we have solitary as an oyster as a quote. Contextually, this simile captures Scrooge's isolation, yet also hints at the possibility of change. It has a dual meaning. An oyster has a hard shell, and that reflects Scrooge's emotional coldness and resistance to connection. Yet an oyster contains a pearl, symbolizing hidden worth and the potential for transformation. It has symbolism of isolation, as oysters are closed, locked away from the world, just as Scrooge has sealed himself off from human connection. And it has foreshadowing, as Dickens subtly hints that Scrooge may still have value within him, despite his outward cruelty. When looking at the wider significance, Dickens suggests that even the hardest-hearted individuals can change. And then also, it's nature versus nurture. Is Scrooge naturally unkind, or has he built his defense due to his past experiences? The next quote is, "The cold within him froze his old features." So contextually, this description of Scrooge directly links his personality to his physical appearance. When analysing the quote, the lexical field of cold, words like frozen, cold, frosty, reinforce Scrooge's lack of warmth and humanity. Also a metaphor, his features are frozen, suggesting he's emotionally numb. And finally, its personification, the cold within him implies that Scrooge has willingly embraced the lifestyle devoid of love and compassion. When looking at the wider significance, there's a contrast with warmth. Later in the novella, the fires, feasts, and glowing descriptions of Cratchit's home provide a stark contrast to Scrooge's coldness. And the image of thawing is gradually developed throughout the text, marking Scrooge's transformation. Then we have hard and sharp as flint, and contextually Dickens compares Scrooge to flint, a material historically used for creating fire, yet also unforgivingly hard. When analysing the quote, it's a simile, and it suggests toughness, unbreakability, and an unfeeling nature. It's symbolic of contradiction, as flint can spark fire, implying that Scrooge has the potential to ignite warmth and change. However, in its raw form, it is harsh, jagged, and difficult to handle. And it also has pre-industrial connotations, but it was a valuable resource in the past, suggesting that Scrooge's worth may still be discovered. When looking at the wider significance, there's links to themes of transformation. Fire, warmth, and generosity are later associated with Scrooge's redemption. Finally, we have, even the blind man's dogs appear to know him. So, contextually, this passage describes how even animals sense Scrooge's malevolence, reinforces his alienation from society. When analysing the quote, it's a hyperbole. It suggests that Scrooge's reputation precedes him to the extent that even blind men's dogs react negatively. It has classical imagery. The phrase, "no eye at all is better than an evil eye," references superstitions about witchcraft and sorcery, likening Scrooge to a supernatural figure of doom. And when looking at the wider significance, the quote reinforces the theme of social isolation. Scrooge is shunned even by the natural world, and it suggests that his presence is almost unnatural, linking him to death and decay. So now we're going to have a look at Dickens's inspiration. We'll firstly look at his personal experience and childhood hardships. So his father, John Dickens, was sent to debtor's prison in 1824, when Charles was just 12 years old. With his family unable to support themselves, Dickens was forced to work at Warren's blacking factory, where he labelled bottles of shoe polish for 10-hour shifts each day. This harsh exposure to child labour, financial instability and social injustice deeply shaped his lifelong advocacy for the poor. His experience working in grim conditions instilled in him a sense of anger towards a society that neglected its vulnerable members. These concerns are evident in A Christmas Carol, particularly through the character of Tiny Tim, who represents the plight of impoverished children in Victorian England. Scrooge's transformation into a more compassionate figure mirrors Dickens's own belief that personal and societal redemption is possible through acts of generosity and reform. Moreover, Dickens's earlier novels, such as Oliver Twist and Nicholas Nickleby, explore similar themes of childhood hardship, but A Christmas Carol presents a more helpful resolution, suggesting that change is within reach if individuals embrace empathy and kindness. Now let's look at influence of the 1843 Parliamentary Report. In 1843, Dickens read the Parliamentary Commission on the Employment of Women and Children, which exposed the horrific conditions faced by working-class children in mines, factories and mills. The report detailed how children, as young as 5, were forced to work in hazardous environments, often suffering severe injuries, malnutrition, and exhaustion. Initially, Dickens planned to write a political pamphlet titled An Appeal to the People of England on behalf of the poor man's child. However, he soon realized that a novella with emotional depth would have far greater impact than a formal essay. By embedding social critique within an engaging ghost story, Dickens ensured his message would resonate with a wider audience. He described his novella as having a sledgehammer force, believing it could do 20,000 times more than a government report. The allegorical nature of A Christmas Carol allows readers to witness the consequences of greed and selfishness as embodied by Scrooge, while also appealing to their emotions through the Cratchit family's struggles. The novella's success ultimately contributed to a shift in public attitudes towards poverty and influenced Victorian philanthropy, helping to reinforce the idea that wealthy individuals had a moral duty to support the less fortunate. Finally, we're going to look at literary and folkloric influences in regards to his inspiration. So Dickens's use of the three ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come aligns with the traditional folklore and religious imagery, where spirits or visions guide individuals towards redemption. The idea of ghostly visitations revealing moral lessons has deep roots in Christian theology, medieval morality plays, and Gothic literature. One of Dickens' earlier works, The Pickwick Papers, included a supernatural short story, the story of the goblins who stole a sexton, in which the miserly Gabriel Grubb is abducted by goblins and shown visions of human suffering, leading to his transformation into a kinder man. This tale is often regarded as a precursor to Scrooge's character arc, suggesting that Dickens had already been experimenting with themes of redemption through supernatural intervention. Furthermore, Dickens was influenced by oral storytelling traditions, particularly Christmas ghost stories, which were popular in Victorian England. By blending folklore, religious allegory, and social critique, he created a story that was both timeless and deeply rooted in contemporary issues. Now we're going to have a look at narrative structure. So we're going to start off with fairy tale elements. Dickens employs elements of myth, legend, and fairy tales, aligning A Christmas Carol with traditional storytelling structures. Like classic fairy tales, the novella features a central protagonist who undergoes a moral transformation, supernatural intervention that guides the character's journey, a clear moral message emphasizing the rewards of kindness and the consequences of greed. The novella also follows the happily ever after trope found in fairy tales. Scrooge's redemption ensures a joyful ending where he becomes a benevolent figure instead of a villain. However, unlike many fairy tales, the novella also contains elements of social realism, making its message more relevant to Dickens's Victorian audience. His use of intrusive narration, direct moral lessons, and symbolic characters, for example, Tiny Tim as innocence, the ghost of Christmas yet to come as death, further aligns the story with moralistic fables designed to teach a lesson. Then we have the hero's journey, also known as monomyth. The novella closely follows Joseph Campbell's monomyth, a storytelling structure found in mythology, folklore, and religious texts. So we have the call to adventure, Scrooge's introduction as a miserly businessman, and Marley's warning about the impending visits of the three spirits. Then we have supernatural aid, so the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and yet to come act as mentors, guiding Scrooge's transformation. Then we have threshold crossing, where Scrooge is taken on a journey through time, confronting painful memories, current realities, and his grim future. Then we have an abyss and revelation. The vision of his own gravestone serves as the climax where Scrooge realizes the emptiness of his existence. And finally, we have return and transformation. So he wakes up a changed man, embodying the spirit of Christmas by embracing generosity, love, and human connection. So by structuring the novella in this way, Dickens ensures that Scrooge's journey is universally unrecognizable, making his redemption arc compelling and emotionally powerful. Then we have the role of the intrusive narrator. So Dickens's narrative style in A Christmas Carol is distinct due to his use of direct address and humour, which engages the reader on a personal level. The narrator breaks the fourth wall as he directly addresses the audience, where he questions the phrase "dead as a doornail." He also injects humour and irony, making the story more engaging despite its serious themes, and he encourages moral reflection, subtly guiding the reader towards Dickens's intended message. This style reflects oral storytelling traditions. Dickens himself was known for performing public readings of his works, bringing the dramatic flair and emotional depth to his storytelling. The narrator's conversational tone helps to soften the novella's darker themes, ensuring it remains accessible to a wide audience. Finally, for narrative structure, we're looking at blending realism and fantasy. So one of Dickens' greatest achievements in A Christmas Carol is his seamless blending of social realism with supernatural elements. We've got the gritty depiction of poverty, for example, the Cratchit family, and ignorance and want, and they ground the story in harsh Victorian realities. And then we have the ghostly interventions, and they introduce a fantasy element, allowing Dickens to explore metaphysical themes like faith, morality, and redemption. This contrast heightens the emotional impact. The supernatural amplifies Scrooge's transformation, while the realistic aspects ensure the story's message remains relevant. Without the fantastical elements, the novella might have felt too didactic. Without the social realism, the message might have lacked urgency and moral weight. By combining the two, Dickens creates a timeless and powerful narrative that continues to resonate with audiences today. So I really hope that this has helped you. Please rewatch this when necessary and get some notes down. If you're stuck on some of the words that I've used in this session, please look on our Ko-fi webpage where I've got the key terms posted on there. And what's next? We have a masterclass on Scrooge's nephew. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye!